Hopefully folks can hear my audio. Given that it's early in the US, I'll give a few minutes just to folks to join before we start.
Hey, Rob, how are you? Can you hear me, Rob? Or because I had problems.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good.
Marisol.
Hey, Diego, ¿qué tal?
Hello. By the way, while we start, I'm very sorry I was not able to reply to you because it's being a complicated. You take holidays this week, Marisol, or?
No, Monday I will be working on the 23rd.
Monday I will be working on the Caminito del Rey, so it's.
I have to make it that one. But yeah, we can talk if you have time tomorrow. Tomorrow or Friday.
Tomorrow I can at least I'll call you and we will see how we can organize the stuff with Camilo, because I don't know where he is and when he is going to have holidays or whatever.
Perfect.
Just be aware this is past the recorded session, so you know this conversation.
No, well, no, I'm not going to say anything. Just try to sort out, because I have been talking with Marisol on chatting on the different means, but not we didn't have the opportunity to talk. Well, now it's yours, Rob. Sorry.
Right. Okay. So I think we should probably get started. So at least go through these bits while people are joining. So first of all, say welcome to everyone who's going to join so far. I appreciate it's early for some folks here. Not sure if they're on yet. But again, in terms of us trying to find a time, this was sort of the best we sort of could do. The note well applies to this meeting as it does to all IETF meetings. So you should be aware of what's written here and what applies, and make sure you've read this or aware of what's there. In particular, I want to draw your attention to the sort of IPR considerations to make sure that you're aware that you have various constraints in terms of what happens in terms of anything you say here could have an impact in terms of IPR. So, if you're not aware of that, make sure you check the policy. I'll give you time for people to read this if they want to, although I imagine most people listed here are already fairly familiar. I think that's probably long enough. Okay. Not really well. Basically, we should all try and be nice and polite to each other. I appreciate it can be hard at times. All of us occasionally can overstep the boundary and things like that. So, but we all try to treat each other with respect and courtesy. And if you find that the behaviour is not as you'd expect, then please either reach out to Diego and I as chairs, and we can help, or you can reach out to the Ombuds team as well. So it is important we treat everyone nicely. So be passionate, but also be polite to your fellow participants and things. In my experience, most of the working groups I've been in have been nicely behaved. So hopefully this will continue that way. On to today. So this agenda is sort of put together fairly last minute. We basically, and we can be a bit more flexible this time here and things, but the plan is to sort of spend majority of the time to sort of discuss use cases, both the presentation to sort of, which I think Emil is going to be giving, sort of covering the use cases that they've been identified. And I would like to sort of go over those in reasonable detail and hopefully have discussion over those and try and reach consensus as to whether we've got exactly what use cases are in scope for green, and whether we've got consensus on what we should be adopting going forward, and if there's any that don't fit. So that's where Dig and I would like to spend the majority of the time to try and close that out. If we have time permitting, we'll move the conversation on to discussing requirements as well. But that's like a second order consideration for this meeting today. We'd like to try and get the use cases wrapped up if we can. To the point where we have effectively an idea of what the working group would like to adopt or consider adopting in that sort of case. Obviously, we'll have to check on the list. In addition to that, there's a few other things that we would like to cover towards the end, like the next steps of where we want to go to. We'll have a few minutes on that. Diego's put some proposed liaison text together, so we'll discuss that as well as time, and our plans for any interims, and also any other business that comes up. Is there anyone here who would like to modify this agenda at all, or got any comments on it? I'm not seeing any, so I think that's okay. But do drop Diego or I a note if there's a reason you want to change anything. As I mentioned here, today's discussion, the aim is discuss use cases, and the things I want to focus on when it's being presented is the use case well understood as to what it is, to be understand what it means? Is it in scope for the Green Working Group as it is something we should be considering? And are we missing any use cases that haven't been presented here? I think the majority of these are coming from I can't remember the name of the document is, but there's one document are coming from draft Stephen Green UCS and requirements. So that document, I don't know if there's others coming on. I haven't seen any others coming in, but if we're missing any, now's the time to catch them. We will cover requirements and then also cover next steps as well. Please, can you also help capture the notes? The link is here to the next page. Somebody will put it into the chat as well. I'll do it in a minute if necessary. But it'd be helpful if we could try and collaboratively capture the keynotes and also the conclusions as well. That'd be appreciated. But Diego and I will try and do that as we go along. But others will be helpful. You can also participate. I thought it'd be just useful, just as a reminder, as we're considering whether things are in scope for green or not. This is from the working charter page. This is the list of things that are not in charter for green. So anything that falls into this list, we should be pushing out and not including here. Some of them should maybe go to the impact or maybe the sustain research group that's being set up. And in particular, things like routing protocols and algorithms are out of scope. The impact on service quality is out of scope as well. Environmental sustainability is currently out of scope of green. I think that might eventually come in the future, but at the moment it is out of scope. So we should focus on energy efficiency in the short term. Again, carbon accounting is out of scope at the moment as well. So those are key ones. So just to be aware of those, please, and we can pull this back up again if necessary. And so, so that effectively covers all of my chair slides and things like that. Does anyone have any questions at this stage before we move on to the presentations? Okay. Stop those. And I think, Emil, are you presenting today? Is that correct? Emil?
Do you hear me now?
I do now, yes. Do you want me to drive the slides, or do you want to present them?
Yeah, I am designated to present them because my colleague Luis is not in a situation where he can present. No, seriously, I can present them, of course. And are you going to do I share the document, or do you handle the
I don't mind. I can drive the slides from here. That's easier, or you can do a share from your side, whichever you prefer.
It's fine. It's fine in that way. So we have been working with Keen, Luis, Benoit, and myself to merge all the main use cases for telcos, and this is what I am going to present. So there is a series of them, and it's still a working step. So don't be afraid if they overlap and so on. So please go to the next slide. Oh, it's a little bit small for me. So wait a bit. I'm going to arrange my. Okay, good. And so Luis proposed a template to go further with use cases, I will say later, because currently we are not in this step yet in the document. And so the template is the following. So a short description of the use case, and then
Emil, we've lost you on audio. We lost you altogether. We'll just give him the moment.
That's one way to save energy.
No, because it was.
Does Emil know he's disconnected? Does anyone have a?
No. Actually, I make a mistake. I was not disconnected. So
Okay, you're back.
You hear me again? Yeah.
I can hear you now. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. So sorry.
Yeah.
Because I changed apps, and so it automatically mute me. This is what happened. And so, coming back to the template proposed by Luis, on Carlos, actually, it's not Luis. And it's made of 3 steps. The first is a general description, and then there is a first filter to focus on the aspect related to the green working group. So then, as an example, the use case involves components that can report on energy consumption, and that might be reconfigured to operate on energy goal and limitation. Okay, and then the last part of the template, it's to convert that in a list of requirements. As an example, to split them in different categories. And the goal is to ease the mapping later in another way of grouping them, actually. Like granularity of measurement, ability to switch on off, ability to reconfigure hardware. And so there are many of that are not obvious at the beginning, but that will show up when we will go in the operation step, I will say, of the use cases. So we can go to the page 3. Thanks. So here is the first use case. Actually, it's the one I prefer. It's an incremental application of the green framework. And so it focuses on the migrating legacy network devices to support energy efficiency. So an example is to take a very old router and to optimize its circuit to reduce power consumption and contribute to energy efficiency. Another basic example is to change one line card that is green aware. So with regard to this use case, the green working group specifics are the baseline establishment. This is from Marisol, is to set up a reference point for typical energy usage. And this is really important for telco because it provides, you see, a reference. If we take back the example of the old router, it's easy to know how much is its consumption. And then when you have this reference point, you can show to your customer or I don't know, other people that you improve the energy consumption of your device. Otherwise, it is quite difficult to make any move and to prove that, actually, or to prove that at some level. And the other aspect related to the green working group is component migration. So transition of hardware and software or software, I mean, they can be separate to support the green framework. And the last aspect of this use case, of this incremental use case, is gradual implementation across the network. And this makes sense because for many reasons, for investment, for deployment, you cannot deploy in 1 second. So you need to deploy, you need time to deploy. And so it's very important to be able to work at to have a network view on what is happening with regard to the incremental application of the framework. And for that, we have at this step the 3 requirements: the discovery, of course, per component granularity. So it can be a line card, port, circuit, I don't know, power, maybe software too, I don't know. Observability, so the access to power consumption data without additional instrumentation. This aspect can be challenged a bit, but it's the main point with regard to observability. Then analysis, and so the capability to have common metrics related to the efficiency, to be able to do some computation that makes sense. And finally, you have the for incremental application, but not only, you need the control and management. So we can go to the page 4. We don't need to spend more time on that.
I was just going to ask you a quick question, Emil.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through all the requirements first, or do you want to handle any questions now? So there's none in the queue, but
it's like you want. If it's a little bit boring, you can interrupt to keep the people listening. I'm fine with all.
So just noticed that Elliot has got a question. It's basically a comment in the chat. Do you want to bring that to the mic, Elliot? So we have discussion on that now. That'd be useful.
Yeah, thanks. I just, it feels that this also, the green working group specifics feels a little abstract, maybe even a little too abstract, right? I can understand the requirements, right? And maybe there's even a route to that, but if the idea is and I guess what I would say is, let's see how the rest go, because maybe it just felt like it went, but before we got into the requirements, but connecting A, B, and C maybe just might be useful in a draft a little more, but I don't know. Let me stop there.
So do you have a question or no? I didn't.
It was a comment. Let's just see how we go.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so if my point here is that it's a snapshot that we have now. It's a first step. Then we have to continue the work on to reduce, I would say, the number of pages on use cases and so on.
I guess if I may, what I would have said is in terms of the use case that I would have connected to the requirements, and this is going backwards, would be understand what you're consuming. If you're going to try and save, you better know what your baseline is. It's really just that simple. I don't think it's a matter of incrementalism. It's just a matter of, in order to know what you're, in order to be able to save anything, you need to know whether you're saving or spending more, right? In terms of, or expending more. So I guess that what I struggled with was the description of that this is actually a matter of incremental application, and just more a matter of, well, know what you're using in order to know if you're actually being effective in whatever mechanisms you put in place.
Yeah, no, and actually the baseline can be measured in different way, but the point is that for telco point of view, we are going to improve the efficiency of the component of our devices, and we need to have the baseline at the beginning, because it provides us a lot of value add later. This is to sum up the point of the baseline.
Benoit?
Right, so I think that you two are telling exactly the same thing. All right, so Elliot, you're telling, yes, I want to do the baseline, maybe this is the requirement, it's the use case. And as an operator, ML is telling, oh, if I need to justify this to my management, I need to basically tell that I could have incremental application of the green framework, and then I would have the money to update my router. But basically, you are doing the same thing in terms of requirements or architecture, or even the use case, in my mind.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add, Benoit, to that.
Oh, it's just a statement, right? You don't need to answer, or I think that you come from two different audiences. One is technical. Okay, I'm technical. I want you to baseline, and you have something to sell to your management as an operator, and you have to say, you know what, I could have a nice marketing message if I change my routers, my line cards, my whatever, as going to be good for the brand of our company. But I want to say the baseline. The point is that you need to have a baseline. We know this, yes.
And so at the minimal, we can use datasheet as baseline, but I don't know if it's accurate enough and so on, but we can document that. So perhaps we can move to the next use case because of the time. Thanks. So the use case 2 is about a selective reduction of energy consumption. And the aim is to select actually network parts and to be able to accord to, I would say, to adjust the power proportionally to the traffic. And so this is a very important use case too. And we have traffic patterns that show peaks on valley or every day or every season, I don't know. And then you can use seasonality in different places. And they can be exploited to reduce the energy consumption in the network proportionality to the traffic delivered. And so the reduction of energy consumption could be based on different mechanisms such as sleep mode of component or switch off capabilities. And so what is specific to the green working group actually the need to define model for activating, deactivating advanced capabilities for energy efficiency. And we have some in EMAN already for that, I think. And so the requirement, the discovery of the capabilities using a component granularity or less, the observability of energy and power consumption, and supposedly at different level, on the control of on the management model for energy efficiency control. So the requirements are not so different from the previous, but there is an additional level here. It's about the capability to configure, I would say, the devices.
So I've just put myself in the queue. So as a contributor, I think the interesting question for this one, so I think this is definitely a valid use case and obvious, I think, is knowing what level of options or details in terms of being able to turn components off or line cards off, or whether it is just a single on or off, or whether there's different power modes to put them in and what those are. So I think that's the interesting question. I'm not sure whether that comes as a use case or that comes out as a later design, but I think that's the interesting aspect of this one from my perspective.
Yeah, it is not clear if the selection comes from individual component or if it's using some some central function that configure. And this may change perhaps the way to proceed.
What was the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question? I sort of missed that. We're saying we don't want to list component, module, and devices, or we want to be even more specific than that?
Was that question to me? What I was asking?
Yes.
No, it wasn't. I think we want to have components and devices. I can't remember what the third level we had with networks or subnetworks was. I think for me, the question is, what's the options in terms of being able to turn something on or off? Is it a simple on-off switch? Is it something more complex than that, where there's different power levels? And I think actually one of the requirements later this slide deck talks about Wi-Fi and the different power levels that those can run in. So you might have a component like a CPU that's sort of in equivalent of like a hibernate mode or a sleep mode, or fully active or turned off. There's different sorts of power levels and how available they are in terms of how quickly they can come back to full capability. So my question was basically, what level of that control do we need to have? I'm not sure it's a use case, but that was the interesting aspect, I think. And how do you report that? Does that clarify?
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, well, what is not clear for me is that is the point. I don't know if the selective reduction comes at the component level or device level or network level. It can be. This can be discussed, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And then the other thing that's just worth raising, again, I'm not sure it's in terms of this use case, but I think, I don't think Tony Lee is on. No, he's not. So I think one of the things that he suggested was the ability to give potentially more information to the device in terms of how much usage an interface is likely to get. So if it's like saying, providing like a load factor and saying actually your load on this interface is going to be at 20%, does that then allow the device to make some decisions as to what power levels it should be run at? So I might be conflating different things, but again, that's another way of giving more information to the device for it to make decisions on how it sort of adjust the power levels in devices.
Yeah, there is one limit here. It's just my view. Okay, I think we must avoid to go close to routing UC behavior.
Yes, agreed.
And this is a limit that you will have to to manage with.
Okay.
So, yeah. We can go to the next slide if you want. On this use case is about reporting on the life cycle management. So it involves tracking embedded carbon related to manufacturing, transport, recyclability, and end-of-life impacts. And aspects related to the green working group are carbon reporting and energy mix observation, I would say. And so with regard to carbon reporting, it's about correlating operation location with carbon factors. And the energy mix is a little bit more simple, I would say. It's about incorporate the diverse energy sources in the energy efficiency. The second is, I would say, it's clearly in the perimeters of energy consumption monitoring. The first is a bit more more, I would say, on the border, I would say, of the working group. But it's if I come back to the incremental use case, it's it makes sense to document that because when you change a line card with another, it's you see it's different carbon factors can change a lot, and so as a telco we need a way to discover, measure, or collect this information. And so the requirement for the green working group are easy to decline here. It's about collecting, you see, embedded carbon data from the vendors and to align on existing ISO standards. And then it is to have the visibility, to be able to compute the mix of energy, is to have the visibility on the energy source that are powering the devices.
Marisol,
Yes.
do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, just a comment on this one, because you highlighted at the beginning what is out of the scope. My understanding is that this use case, even we have it in the document, in the existing document, it should go to a low priority because it's more related to the carbon. For the runtime operations, I don't see that relevant only for procurement or decision on migrations, right? I think that is important in a more carbon awareness discussion, right, at the energy efficiency, because I believe we will not go into the what we define as embedded energy that is used in the process of the production or transportation of the device. And I would consider this use case out of scope initially.
Yeah, I don't oppose to that, but we can add a note on the incremental use case to see if we don't need some minimal, you see, minimal information on that from the vendors.
I think it's useful information, but yeah, it will be something to agree, right? If should have a priority or not for initial use cases and requirements, as this involve more things to add, right, in the framework as well.
I was just going to comment on this in the queue. So potentially both hats on. I think for the moment that this is, I would say, out of scope. I think this is going beyond like the energy efficiency, and it's moving towards into sort of carbon reporting and that sort of thing. So I think in terms of what, as I read the working group charter, I think this is out of the initial scope. So the question is, what we do with this requirement is, of this use case, is do we just sort of choose not to document it at all at this stage? The alternative could be to pull it out into a separate document of potential future use cases and things to consider, or keep it within the same document, but split the sections to have these are the use cases that we're focusing on the moment, and these are the ones that we're considering down the line. It does seem possible that in a future rechartering the working group that this could come into scope, but I think we would be obliged to sort of deliver our initial deliverables first before we move on to this work. So I think it's worth tracking and being aware of it, but I think we should say at the moment, in my opinion, is that no, we don't focus on this. This isn't a use case in terms of what we are trying to solve in our initial work.
Yeah, I think there is a consensus to move this use case in the living list for the next step, if I understood properly the exchange. We discussed one solution was to move it in the working group wiki or something like that too.
Yeah, a working group wiki is fine, or a GitHub repository of future of use cases and requirements again would also work, or even a draft that we keep as like a living document of these. Any of those is fine. I'm not sure I have a strong preference as to which direction to go. I think somebody could just propose we do it that way and then see how that, see if people are happy with that or anyone complains. Any other questions on this use case now? Shall I move to the next one?
Yeah. And so this is the use case 4. It's about real-time energy metering of virtualized or cloud-native network function. Yeah, this is what I name, you see, software, but you can name it in another way if you want. So the description is, the goal is to facilitate a precise real-time estimation of energy consumed by virtualized or cloud-native network function. And so what is specific to the green working group here is the need of real-time monitoring of energy consumption. And to apply that to virtualized function. And so, from my view, these are pure software. So it consists in measuring the power consumption of software. And I don't know if there are pieces of hardware, specific hardware that you can tie with that. Anyway, so you need a precise estimation, so a technique for accurate energy use estimation. And in addition, you need to take into account cloud-native aspect, like adaptation to dynamic and scalable environment. So I have in mind, you see a container. So of course, if the network function, you mean create and destroy many containers, it's going to be hard to measure the power consumption. And the requirement comes to monitoring again, so be able to do energy reporting, but in real time. And then you have to integrate that in a seamless way into network management system. And this is not going to be so simple, I think. And you need to be accurate and to ensure precise data to allow the later, you see, accurate, you see, energy analysis. And then it must scale, because you need to adapt to dynamic change in cloud-native environment. And so my view is this is not specific to cloud-native, but there are specific aspects that must be documented, I think.
Yeah, go.
So,
as usual, I was talking with to a muted mic. Sorry. No, it's just about the qualification of real time. It looks like the other metering is not going to be real time. It's simply that, or do you have in mind particular aspects in which remarking the real time here is important? I mean, it's simply that in all cases we're talking about real time metering, right?
Well, I think there are several dimensions here. You have the continuous, you see, energy consumption. This is something that means that you are sampling, actually, when you measure. It's not specific to virtualized function, but if you want accurate energy consumption measure, you need to arrange your sampling accordingly. And now, with regard to virtualized function, it depends of their life. How long is their life? This is my view.
Okay.
I mean, if your container life duration is 2 seconds, it's going to be tricky to measure its power.
Well,
it's my view. I'm not the author of this use case, but it's my view.
You know, cloud nativeness is a little bit overrated, but anyway, yeah, no, I understand it. Yes, fine. Understand what you have in mind.
But it's really a good technical case.
No, it is, and challenging indeed. Yes.
So I've got some like a clarifying question here. So, is it specifically like virtualized network devices that you're thinking of here, or network functions in terms of, is that a different scenario? Because if that's just like a virtualized network device that is long lasting, then I imagine there should be sort of little difference between that and a physical device, other than maybe how you attribute the energy usage. Whereas, as you say, for anything that's short-lived, then again, that definitely has some interesting constraints about a device that can't necessarily report its own data over a long period of time because it disappears. So I think this is a valid use case. I think maybe some clarity on whether you mean network functions as in how IETF can think of network functions, or you mean something in terms of virtualized network devices, or something between the two, or both of those.
My point is that I don't know why virtualized or cloud native network function require more real-time care than the other function. This is not clear for me.
Okay, but the use case that so you can certainly say that in terms of what we want to produce as a working group, we want to be able to cover both physical devices and also virtualized devices. That seems like a clear use case.
Yeah, but in this case, we can add a software component too. It's not perhaps virtualized, but I'm sure that one software component of a device can be optimized with regard to energy consumption. So now, how you show that, how you report that, how you measure that, I don't know. But it's very. I'm not the one who writes the microcode and so on, but I'm sure that they can decrease the average power consumption by 50% in I don't know 10 days. It seems the first reduction of average power consumption is simple to get, because currently nobody can take care of that. But it's not a virtualized, it's not cloud native network function. And so we can generalize the real-time energy metering to hardware component, software network function, and general software component. It's
I think this requirement may need more work to clarify exactly what it's meant. It may be split, or not. It's not quite use case. Because I'm not sure that Diego and I and you all have the same understanding what we're talking about here. Should we move? Are there any more questions on this one, or we can come back to it later?
We can switch to the next one, I think.
Okay.
And this is number 5. It's about indirect energy monitoring and control. It's a very very, very curious use case because it's far more complex than it appears. And so it focuses on the necessity for devices to report on other entity within a network for effective energy management. So the goal is address unique energy management need distinct from typical network management function. And you see, we have a question on the scope. We don't know if it covers only power over internet or if it includes smart power units. So we will discuss this question later. So what is specific to the green working group? So the first aspect here is indirect monitoring. This was already described in EMAN. And so it's about obtaining power value from other entities in the power distribution tree or external source like database or datasheet. And it's about indirect control, which requires communication with upstream entity to manage power supplies, like power units or power over internet switches, which control power at socket or ports. And so here there is a list of requirements a bit more longer. So we need a communication protocol to facilitate indirect communication, both for monitoring and or control, I think. We need instrumentation, so the ability to measure power at various distribution points. Of course, we need an energy management framework to adapt to indirect address energy management methods. And this, again, was already clearly identified and, I think, specified in EMAN. I think more larger in the other MIPS. And here there is a requirement for standard conformance to align with other standard specifying feature for compliance, such as MIP module specification. And I will add one requirement here from telco is to avoid double accounting of power consumption. So if you have a so feel free to ask a question or to react. And what is specific to this use case is that at the beginning of the preparation of the BOF and so on, we were mostly excluding a POE. And I have the feeling that now it's coming back with perhaps the longest list of requirements.
Benoit, do you want to go?
All right, so this is true that when we look at the list of requirements, we initially excluded POE, but during the last meeting, Tony Lee was presenting about this basic set of Yang objects, and I went to the mic and I said, do you, in your view, is POE a use case that is covered? He said, absolutely. And this is the question here. Do we cover PoE and the smart PDUs? Because these are actually the same thing. A PoE is a port on a device and it giving power to a different device, right? So it reports on a different device and it controls a different device, because if you shut down the port, there is no power to the remote device, which means that you need to have the notion of device ID. You need to have a model that tells you, I monitor for someone else, I control from someone else. And maybe the reverse relationships, like I'm the Wi-Fi and I'm actually giving power by a port on a switch. So this is the same thing from a smart PDU in a data center, where you want to see how much of your servers are being, how much energy they use. So as a consequence, you have directly on the PDU the ability to say, oh, this server is consuming that much. So this is the question. Are those use cases included? Yes or no? And based on that, yes, there is a series of requirements that we have, but that's the first question. Those two use cases are in or out?
So I will. So from the charter point of view, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's open on this. So, but in terms of my view as a participant, I think we have to be able to understand the power usage of those devices, like a PoE device switch or something, a PoE device. Where that gets reported and how it gets reported is the sort of question that I think you're really asking for. Is do you have the capability of reporting power usage for another entity? And that I don't know the answer to, but I definitely think this is the key thing, that one of the key use cases that we need to figure out and know, because it affects the design.
If I may add, the last point that Emil mentioned, not double counting. This is key, because this is actually easy to say, oh, I've got a port on my switch. It reports energy. And I've got also a Wi-Fi router. It reports energy. But unless you monitor the relationship between the two, unless you know of the relationship between the two, you're going to double count. This is the key issue.
Any more comments on this one now? Otherwise, maybe we come back to this one towards the end. I think this is the one that's going to take the most discussion time. I don't want to have this discussion now or go through all the requirements, then come back.
Yeah, well, one last point on this one is to decide if it's part of the first of the current charter, or if it's going to be moved for further study in the next charter. It's part of the. I think this is part of the discussion we can have on this use case.
We have Marisol in the queue.
Yeah, there is one slide at the end of the about PoE specifically. I guess we can review in there. I think it's one key use case on energy optimization and control.
So yeah, we can go to the next one if you want.
Just one brief comment. I think that deciding in terms of modeling and being able to communicate, etc., is something that this use case, I believe, is in my view as a participant. I believe it fits into the original goals. We set the targets in devices, and if we want to limit ourselves to the network forwarding or the network routing devices, that's another story. It could sound reasonable to start with, because this could bring additional complications. But when we're talking about modeling, about how to model the energy consumption, how to model the energy control, in principle, could be transparent, as long as we are not trying to to incorporate technologies or mechanisms that are out of the scope of what we can address. In that case, if we were talking about interoperability, transformation functions, etc., we will be talking about something different. But I agree with Rob that probably this is something that is for further discussion. We're not going to solve it right now, but we can consider this as an interesting use case that deserves more discussion later on.
At some extent, I think that this use case deserves an interim meeting to be sure that we are not missing, the important part or the main framework aspect.
Benoit? They've gone out the queue. Yes, possibly an interim, but if we get time, discuss it today would be good. But let's try and get through the other use cases first and come back.
Sorry.
So I'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah,
Or Benoit, do you want to
yeah.
ask your question first?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because when I'm hearing that we need an interim meeting to discuss this one, I believe that we are in an interim meeting, right? And I'm thinking, okay, what do we need to discuss? Is this use case is in or out? We need the operator's feedback, right? So actually, I believe that we should not focus too much on the requirements of this solution for now. To any question, is this important to operator, yes or no? So having another full interim meeting just to answer that question, maybe it's an overkill. But this is just my view.
Yeah, what I mean is that Iman worked a lot on that, on the indirect aspect, and I trust them that there were good reasons for that, and we should be sure that we're not missing it.
Should we move to the next?
Yeah. So this is a use case 6. It's about consideration of other domain for obtention of end-to-end metrics. And here, by domain, we are speaking about other technologies outside IETF, like, I don't know, I suppose it's 3GPP stuff. And perhaps I would say that this is tied to other SDO who specified energy metrics too. And so it's about end-to-end energy efficiency metrics, which require to combine or compose metrics per each of those domains. And what is specific to the green working group here, it's the definition of composable energy efficiency. And one example is the slice, the network slice energy efficiency. And the requirement for the green working group are observability of energy and power consumption levels. And here the levels probably need to be clarified, I think. And with regard to analysis, it's about the generation of composable metrics. And so this use case is really broad, I think. I have been involved in the composition of metrics with Al Morton in the past, and it's not a piece of cake to aggregate things. So my view is that end-to-end energy efficiency is perhaps not in the first charter. But we need to start working on the composability of the metric we will define in the working group before addressing the end-to-end view. This is just my view. I'm not.
Yeah, if I may, I assume that you are finished of introducing this, Emil. My main concern is that probably, as you said, probably going end to end is going beyond the scope. But considering aggregated metrics or composed metrics or whatever, I do think that this does fit in the scope. I mean, making it possible to aggregate metrics from different sources and supporting this composition of metrics is something that definitely will be interesting, even if we are not trying to address full end-to-end. It's simply, I mean, the consumption for a network segment or you use the example of slices somewhere. Well, a slice is not or needs not to be end-to-end in many cases. If you think about you limit it to the mobile network, but in the mobile network, in the mobile core and the radio, you will be considering several elements. So the possibility of aggregating them would be interesting, definitely. Maybe that we could delete from the title or from the definition the end-to-end term and talk about aggregated.
Well, or maybe we can remove domains too. I'm joking. No. I say that because when we say power consumption level at the end, I was thinking of the power consumption of the fans, you see, of the power data unit. Do we include that?
Mm-hmm.
This is a level that is not a network level, but it's an infrastructure level, and it's part of that too. But I think it's opening the box. If we want to go fast, we should not go there. But the composability of our metrics is something that we must absolutely be sure of.
Actually, I'll turn my mic on before I start talking. So I was just making some notes at the same time. So I've got a few different thoughts on here. So in terms of whether this is in scope or not, I definitely think that the charter scope covers like network-wide metrics as well as components and devices. I think that was discussed during chartering, and I think and even subnetworks as well came up. So I think that is in scope, and so certainly it would seem obvious that if you're trying to get the metrics for a network, you would do that through aggregating the networks on the individual devices or components and things. So there has to be some level of aggregation and composability in terms of what we're able to do. I also think that the requirements, as you mentioned about like the fans or the coolers within a data center or within a network location, I think that again, that sort of feels very similar to the need to report energy statistics for legacy devices or things that won't be able to export these YANG models, or even maybe even like the PoE case where you want to report metrics for other things. So again, I don't think that necessarily should be that complex and should fall into this thing. So in terms of end-to-end energy efficiency, if it's talking about flows, then I have more concerns. But if it's talking like a network wide or maybe a service with that network, I think possibly that should be within scope. But I do agree this is potentially a complex use case, and we should maybe push it down the list as being a little bit lower priority so that we don't end up with a solution that's too complex in the initial version. We should focus on simplicity and then expand out to this. I'm not sure that's a clear answer for you, Emil.
Well, it's just to balance between what we can list and what we can do. You see.
Okay. So
I mean, in a reasonable time. You see, and perhaps with regard to composability, we can include. You see the double accounting there, but I don't know.
So I think this use case, we shouldn't throw this out at the moment. I think we should consider it. It might need some refinements, is my thoughts. Any other questions, or should we move on? Oh, Diego, you in the queue? If you are, you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm in the queue because I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry. So, Emil, when you feel like, continue, please.
Yeah, we can go to the next one. On the use case 7, yeah, I think these are new use cases from King that we aggregate this morning. And it's about dynamic adjustment of network elements throughput according to traffic levels in wireless transport networks. And the use case is adjustment of radio link power based on the observed traffic level. And this already been worked on by other SDO and even in the IETF. So it's not so new. And so what is specific here to the green working group is the need of models, a definition of model for activating, deactivating advanced capabilities for energy efficiency. And the requirement are the discovery of these capability and the observability of the energy and power consumption level, and of course the control and management model for energy efficiency control. And what we say is that we can merge it with the use case 2.
Well, then I will lower my hand because it was what I was going to say. Sorry. That it looks like a particular case of use case 2. Yes.
Yeah, it's one more illustration you see of the adjustment of the power with the traffic or the reverse.
And I was going to say the same things, Diego. I also see this as being merging this with use case 2.2 would be a good choice, and you cite this as a specific sort of example. I think that'd be a nice way of doing it, to say, look, this is one concrete example of doing that. But I think in terms of the actual use cases, I think this isn't new. This is just part of the same one.
For my view here, we have to take care to not tie the control on the observation, because sometimes the networks element can adjust themselves, and we just need to account the consumption.
Any more questions on this one, or move on? Don't see any, so I'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah. So this is this use case is not the last one. I think we are close to the end here. It's about video streaming, and so to focus, it's about the growth of the number of simultaneous flow at higher bit rate per flow, and this has a big consequence that we need to upgrade our network devices continuously. So to use higher capacity interfaces, and the drawback is that this increases the difference between peak and valley of traffic, and of course of energy consumption. And what is specific here to the green working group is to the need of defining model for activating and deactivating the capability for managing the energy efficiency. And so, of course, we need models to report that accordingly, and probably at the stream level. And this is probably what is specific to this use case. And the requirement are the discovery of the component module device capabilities, on perhaps the discovery of the stream capabilities, the post-stream capabilities, to be precise, on the need to observe the energy and power consumption level, and so at which level the line card is operating. And of course, we need a control and management model for energy efficiency. And we need specific metrics for reporting per flow energy. And we said that it can be merged to the use case 2, but the per stream level, it's do we consider that it's as another domain, or is it something that we can that we can include in the use case 2? Luis is not here, but I think he can respond to that perhaps later.
So I was going to comment again. I see this as being another instance of 2.2. So like another example of a use case that fits into that broader use case, like a example.
And perhaps the streams, is the stream use case close to the slice use case or not? I don't know. Because we are more or less, you see, dividing the throughput capacity in pieces or fragmenting. I don't know how you can word that, but and so it's a bit similar to from the management or the reporting point of view, is probably close to the slice case too.
So just looking at this, the one difference here, and this is going to requirements here, is like reporting energy per flow. Then, and I think that's out of charter. I can't try to remember what was on that slide earlier on. But I think that is potentially out of scope for the working group at the moment, that we're not doing per flow energy. So again, if this requirement is, if this use case is separate, then I think it would be a matter of saying actually this is low on the priority list, and it will be a potential future one because we're not covering per flow energy usage.
Okay, it makes sense for me, but perhaps we will keep it in the discussion without. I mean, the point will come back naturally in the discussion. So, okay, let's move to the next one if you want. Because okay. I see the clock running. And so yes, this was added this morning. It's about it's correlated to the POE case, and so it can be merged with the use case 5. And so I don't know if Kin is here. I heard that it has to go to the IRB meeting, so. Okay, so I will present on. I will present it.
He was active on the chat, but I don't.
Yeah, see. But I know it's in 2 meetings, but I don't know if it's currently still in 2 meetings.
That's yes. That's regrettably this happens too often. Recently,
yeah, it's just normal.
Yeah.
So it's
the
about
new normal.
Yeah. It's about
we are learning to do many, not several, but many things at the same time.
Yeah, I see the difference. Yeah, and so it's about the fact that access points are usually powered by PoE switch, and the access point nodes are the network devices with the largest number of consuming most of energy. So therefore, the working status of the access point is the core of the energy saving solution. Okay, this is about the scalability. So And so he wants to address the power consumption level of each access point. And he considers it can be broken in 3 modes. So the power off, the hibernation mode, and the low power consumption mode. And so in the first mode, the PoE switch shut down the port and really cut the power of the access point. And when the access point wake up, the port provide power again. So of course, it take a bit for the access point to recover. It can be several minutes. And the second case is hibernation. It's only low power used to protect key hardware such as the CPU and other components. Oh, sorry. It's low power the consumption, and so it keep I suppose some CPU running and other components are shut down. So, and then you have the low power consumption mode. So it's a more smart, I think. So it's about keeping one bands active. So in this case, it keeps the 2 gig for running, and it disables other radio bands. And so it's already a typical use case for another domain. And there are many variations that we can do on that. And so what he says, in energy saving deployment, after the surrounding energy saving access point are shut down, the working access point automatically adjusts the transmit power to increase the coverage of the area at specific energy saving period. Okay, so in this case, they decide, the access point decide alone to adjust the transmit power to increase the radio coverage. And so we have 3 figures here about the PoE off, and then we have the low power with just one band active, and the figure 3 about the management. And we don't see the state in the figure 3. Anyway, what is specific to the green working group, it's control and management model for dynamic energy saving and scheduling. And scheduling, I think, is new. And so the requirements are the ability to switch on or off to power the level 2 network device at specific time periods. And the ability to reconfigure various different energy saving modes to adapt to network change. And the last one is to optimize wireless resource management to support dynamic energy saving.
So just a comment on this one. So I see this, this does have overlaps with some of the previous use cases that have been presented, although I think because it's a mix of them, I would probably keep this as a separate use case. I think it's probably clear enough on its own that it's okay, even though some of it overlaps with what's been presented previously. Any other thoughts on this? I'm just, again, also aware of the time because it's like 20 past. We've got 40 minutes left and we want some minute time at the end. So there's no other questions. This one, I think we should move on to the next.
Let's move. You skip one?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So this is about fixed network energy saving. It can be merged with the use case 2. And here we have sort of, you see, calendaring behavior, like heavy traffic period, light traffic period. And so So these periods are clearly distinguished, and the switching time between the periods is quite fixed and cyclic. And in tidal networks, devices can be shut down or sleep during low traffic period to save energy. And the example is a metro backbone network where you have different speed interfaces. And so you can configure your router to choose to adjust speed on the interface based on the network traffic load change. And this should save energy. And in addition, the router can adjust the number of working network processor core on clock frequency of a chipset and the number of, I don't know what is this, SRDs. For me, it's I have to investigate buses based on network traffic load change to save the energy. Yeah, so of course, when you change, when you decide to clock down interfaces, you can clock down all the chain inside the routers. And so what is specific to Green Working Group here, it's a network model to control and manage dynamic energy saving and scheduling. I think the new point is about scheduling here. And the requirement is the ability to shut down devices during low traffic periods and to restart them after. The ability to adjust interfaces speed to the traffic level, and the ability to adjust working component to adapt to network traffic change too.
Diego?
Neil, I don't know. I mean, but this, how in the way this is expressed, I think that somehow is similar to the previous one. I mean, in one case you are using of an array or an array of access points. In this case, we are talking about sort of an array of routers that follow this tidal environment. But at the end, what we are talking is about sort of integrated management of several devices that are interconnected. I don't know if in both cases what we're talking about is about switching off or putting in a low consumption state a number of devices because they're not being used. I don't know if this could be combined into. I see that Rob has mentioned that in the chat. Does this UC2 is similar to case 2.2? But my impression is that at least the ones that are called UC1 and UC2 are very similar, depending on the kind of technology that you're using, whether it's a fiber or we are talking about wireless LAN.
Yeah, but from a telco point of view, what we need to go a bit lower in the framework to distinguish cases where it's the components that decide alone that is going to slow down, or from the cases where it's another component that decide for him.
I was just going to comment. So I just this seems very close to use case 2.2 to me. This is, as far as I can see, this is just dynamically monitoring the traffic and then modifying the device based on that. So I think this should be merged with 2.2. I'm not sure I see that much difference in things on here.
Yeah, there's two aspects here that cannot work together. So, does the router adjust the speed of the interface based on network traffic, or does it do it based on the scheduling? This is something that is not clear for me. And,
And again, so one of the previous ones mentioned doing like scheduling of config changes, but I think that's likely to end up as out of scope for what Green is going to be doing, as in we can define a data model on how you can configure these properties. But if you want to have dynamic scheduling, that's either done via a controller through the existing mechanisms that they can modify configuration, or a more generic mechanism within netmod or netconf to allow like dynamic scheduling of configuration. I've in fact actually even there's another working group that's looking at as well. The delay time variant routing working group again is also looking similar sort of stuff.
Yeah, I choose not to pronounce the word because it's not in the
So from that, I don't know devices whether they will change the speed of the interfaces to adjust power use. I'm not sure there's necessarily that much change in power usage for these if you change the interface speed. Maybe it could turn off some lasers or something. I'm not sure on that one. So, but again, I sort of think in terms of the models that we'll end up creating, they should be fairly abstract to this. I suspect, or we push the details to future. If there's any other comments on this one, otherwise I think we should move on. If that's okay. Right, I'm gonna move to the last one.
Yeah, this one is about energy efficiency network management, and so energy efficiency management allow network operator to see real-time consumption, but it also allowed to see which network device enable energy saving, and so the total energy consumption changing trend over the time of the day for all the network device, and in addition the efficiency changing trend over the time of the day of the whole network. So so this issue, it's about enabling, you see, the possibility to adjust the network and to optimize based on the network status evolution. And so what is specific to the Green working group here is the need of metrics and the need of composite metrics to compute energy efficiency and to do the data collection of them. And the requirement is to provide observability for network-wide energy efficiency statistic data, the ability to provide observability at network level, and the ability to discover energy saving capability for each device type. And this use case is tied to work made by other SDO and work made in the IETF too about young models related to the topic.
So just some comments on this one. I think the use case is valid here, but sort of the obvious one is that you need to do energy efficiency at the network level as well as per devices. I'm a little bit less convinced by the energy saving evaluation because I think that's sort of hard to know. Yeah, I think that one is more heuristics based rather than knowing how much power you actually save. I guess if you were going to run the device at full power and you turned it to a low power mode for a period of time, you could observe an energy saving. But I guess I would just see what the overall energy usage of the network is and the amount of traffic that's being forwarded and calculate it that way. So I'm not sure on this one. Are there any other comments on this one here? Otherwise, I suggest I'd like to sort of go back and try and sort of test consensus on some of these to see if we can get agreement to move them forward.
No, well, I think that this is basically again about aggregation. Probably could be connected with the one that was called originally end-to-end, but well, not necessarily. I mean, just as a comment, I see that Marisol is entering.
My only comment on this one, it was raised by Tim specifically, and it's the only one that is touching the metric, right? As energy efficiency, what you do with the metric is just how the use case will be applied. But I think it's one of the requirements, and this is one of the metrics that I would say has the most relevance. And the energy efficiency can be applied to the component, to the device, or the network. Then I was thinking as well that it's good to have it there, right? But that is my add into this.
Okay. So Emil, is there no more questions of this? So thank you for presenting through these. So we've got basically a sort of 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes before we need to wrap up. What I will plan to do is go back over the slides and then just do a poll of hands for the use cases to see if we can get some consensus on whether it should be included. And I was going to ask the question separately as to whether it's well understood and it's in scope. I'll probably combine those into single questions on each of those slides so we've got time to do them. So going back to this, give me a few moments to do a show of hands. Okay, I'm not sure my question is brilliantly worded, but hopefully I'll explain it. So I've said, is this use case well understood and within scope for the initial green work? So effectively I'm saying, is this something that's both we understand what we're saying here and we should include it in our list of use cases? Give it just a moment for people to find the show of hands tool and participate. So, and just to check, so I'm just looking at the poll there, we've got 7 and yes, 3 and no opinions. But any of those with no opinion, are any of you against including this within the working group? And if so, can you join the mic line and comment, even as opposed to this? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next one, so we've got time. Okay, so my reading of that is that this is well understood, I think, or reasonably well understood, and that there is support for using this use case in the Green Working Group. So moving on to the next one. So this is use case 2.2. We've had quite a lot of discussion on this one. Cut and paste. Same question for this use case. So this is reduction of energy consumption proportional to network levels. Okay, I think that one's fairly clear, so I will stop the poll there. So this one has everyone, so 12 yes, nobody against, or no opinions. So I think we can say that one is again understood and within scope. So we'll move on. Yeah, I think the charter sort of covers this one as well, so it's not surprising. So moving on to the next one, use case 2.3. So reporting on lifecycle management. So this one, we've said that we think this one is probably out of scope. So I want to know if there's anyone here who thinks that it is in scope for the working group. I've asked the question possibly the same as all the others. I'll take a no as being it's regarded as being out of scope for the initial work effectively.
So Rob, we have to say no if we consider it's out of scope?
Yes.
Okay, good.
No, if it's out of scope, and it may be, we'll probably keep this on a list of futures or something similar. So it doesn't mean we have to delete it altogether, but in terms of what use cases we'll use for focusing our initial work and the requirements, we'll regard this as being out of scope, which I think is consistent with the charter. So I think I can close that one as well. That seems to be fairly consistent with what I'd expect. So moving on to the next one, the slide so people can read it while I question. So 2 for 2.4. So this one was about energy metering for virtualized or cloud native network functions. Again, so the question is this, the question is both, is this well understood and is this within scope? And I can potentially, maybe I can split this out in a moment. So, so I'm seeing this one as a split between yes and no's equally, and I suspect that may be because from the discussion we had, it sounded like there might be further discussion required to understand exactly what this is and what this is covering. But there could well be something that I think is covered here. So I'll keep all the questions the same for these use cases, but my interpretation of this is this one isn't necessarily ruled out, but further discussion is required to determine exactly what this is and whether it should be within scope. Moving on to the next one, 2.5. So it's a shame this one. I was hoping we'd have more time for this. We might have some time for discussion on this. I'll ask the same question again. Is this well understood as what it is? And do we believe this is in scope or not? And this is about indirect energy monitoring. So my read of this is that there's definitely a leading towards people thinking that we do need to include this. But there's a bit more people that are against this or no opinion. So the people who have voted no, do any of you want to speak to the mic line on this? Is it concerns about the complexity that's being introduced in the initial scope? Does anyone else want to speak to that? Now's opportunity. So I'll leave this one for as it is now. I think this is sort of more ambiguous as what the outcome is. If there's time, we'd like to come back and discuss this one further if we can. So let's skip that one. Moving on to the next one. End-to-end metrics, 2.6. So there's a couple of no's here. Again, with my combined question, it's hard to know with us because people think that some more discussion of this is required, or whether they think it's simply out of scope. So this one's slightly less clear, but still quite a positive support for wanting to include this. Next one, 2.7. So this one, the proposal dynamic adjustment of traffic levels in wireless transport network. So I'm going to ask the same question initially, which effectively I want to interpret as should this be a separate requirement to 2.2? This should. I should change it. Sorry, should it be the same as as you see 2.2? So I'm asking first of all, should this be just included in the proportionality use case 2.2? And any of the people who are voting no here, do you want to speak to why? I can't see the chat at the moment because in terms of the windows, I can see chat center. I can't. So it'd be good to understand the people who think this is separate. Is it just they think wireless is a separate requirement? So otherwise, again, I see most support for this being merged with 2.2 as a sub case example. And next one, 2.8, video streaming. So I'm going to ask the same question as we asked the previous one: is should this be included in 2.2? And I've rephrased what the question slightly. Go on, Benoit.
And if you believe it should not be a charter, what should you be answering?
If you think this is not in charter,
because it not flows.
Then no is the answer. Then I can ask that. I'll ask that question separately. Thank you. Okay, so quite a lot of people want to exclude this. That's fine. And then I'm going to ask the same. So I'll ask the question I've been asking the previous ones to get confirmation that is because. So this is one I'm specifically going to ask if it's well understood and within charter. So for 2.8 as well. So this now, is it well understood and is it within the green working charter? So either you don't think this is understood, or if you think it's not in charter, please vote no. If you think it is in charter, then say yes. Okay. Got time. Let's try and just cover the last three, so we've got some read of the views in the room or online. So this UC1 can be merged with 2.5. So I'll ask first whether it can be merged. Okay, so I think that one's fairly clear. Everyone thinks that should be covered by the existing one. That's fine. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. UC2. I appreciate some of the name of these is a bit confusing. Merged with 2.2. So again, I think everyone's happy to see that merged. Okay, and the last one, I appreciate I haven't given you much time to vote for these, but and this one, so again, I'll just ask whether this is well understood and within scope. So let's choose that. So my read of this one is there's a little less strong agreement to do this, although it's still swinging. Yes, we should include it. It may be that this needs further sort of work on exactly what's been defined and included here, I suspect. But my read is that something along this line probably should be included. So so I think that's given us a good read of the view of the use cases. We won't have time to discuss requirements today. I do think it would be it'd be helpful to, obviously we'll try and get this confirmed on the list. We will sort of try and get a summary from that in terms of what people's views are. I think we need to think about the next steps here. We haven't had time to discuss requirements at all. I think Diego and I had a chat before this meeting, and one of the proposals we thought about was whether it'd be worth pulling just the use cases out into a separate document, at least temporarily, to try and get that adopted as a working document sooner, and then focus on the requirements as like a separate stage, which eventually may merge back into the same document, but as a way of testing consensus and getting people to check that they're happy with the use cases. Does anyone does anyone have any comments or thoughts on that approach now, or anyone opposed to trying to do that?
I wanted to note one thing. If we go with this format that has been proposed, and I assume that my understanding from what Emil was saying is that they were the authors of the draft were planning to go through this format. We are including in the discussion of the use cases the use cases, the requirements. There might be some list of general requirements that I can't even imagine that most of them would be related to the charter. So after having a look at the slides and the discussion, etc., probably if they plan to go in that direction, then somehow we will arrive naturally to what you were mentioning, Rob, that we were discussing yesterday. That let's focus on the use cases and on the direct requirements implied by them, and we would not need a detailed list of requirements out of this, at least for the moment. That would be my take here.
Yes, that's one choice. The other possibility is is simply to leave the requirements text out of it altogether in the short term. Either way would work. But the only question is, if we do an adoption poll, are people going to get stuck on the requirements if any are listed? Would it be better to keep that text out and just cover the use cases and do an adoption on that?
That's true.
So maybe Diego and I will discuss this a bit more after this meeting in terms of next steps. But I think we would like, based on the discussion today, Marisol, do you want to speak? Marisol?
Yeah, sorry, I was talking in mute. What we discussed when preparing the session, it was, based on the feedback, because we have been listing the requirements per use case, just to wrap up all those requirements and make another section in the document. But you let us know how you want to proceed. If you want to make another independent document, I'm good as well, just to see where we put our efforts, right, as a next steps.
Yeah, my thought was not so much in terms of what the overall structure is, but in terms of trying to get something adopted early on. The use cases we've had good discussion today, there seems to be good consensus around a lot of them. So it's trying to get that sort of nailed down and then have a second round of doing requirements, and then we can feed those into the same document or separate document. I don't mind, but trying to keep that discussion separate was what I was thinking. We're still making progress with this now.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's. Oh, Hisham, do you want to speak? You might be muted, Hisham. We can't hear you.
I'm mute. Yeah, I'm mute. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
So only 17 people voted for this, who are attending this meeting, but the people who attend the meeting in IETF may be larger than this number. So are you going to do another voting?
Well, what we'll do in all IETF practices. So anything that's sort of discussed this meeting isn't binding itself. We will confirm it on the list. So that way we will ensure that everyone else has a chance to sort of discuss it, and that's where the final consensus check is done. But also at the point that we do an adoption of any document, that will be done on the list. And again, that's the sort of point I would regard as being the firmest sort of check of consensus in terms of what's written in that, what the use cases are written down, and that people had a chance to sort of read and review it.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Benoit.
So Rob and Diego, we've got a debrief meeting with the author of that document tomorrow. So if you've got strong guidelines, feel free to give them to us before that meeting, right? If it's not sure and you're going to wait until you've got more feedback from the mailing list, that's also fine. Just letting you know our schedules for the authors.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I think we're not towards the wrap up. We've got 5 minutes left. Diego, did you want to cover the?
It would be extremely simple. There is a liaison statement that we will we agreed during the meeting in Dublin to issue a liaison statement to the organizations that are working in related aspects. I have drafted ones with us and included some comments from Mahesh and Rob. And well, is there, you have it in the agenda where if you want to have a look at it, I will share on the list this. I wanted to have time to show it, but I think that we don't have the time for this, but we can discuss it on the list. The only point that is not totally clear to me, I will tell you about this on the, is who or what is the origin of the statement, whether it's the chairs of the group or it's the group itself or it's the IETF, etc. I made it the way in which I'm used to see the liaison statements, but it's something that is simply a matter of who sends this and who is going to be replied by when the whoever decides to reply. You'll see it's basically saying we have started the group. Our charter is focused on this. We will welcome collaboration, but I'll share it on the list. to get some input from you, and to if we can declare consensus soon, it would be interesting, so we can make the announcements and tell them the whole world that we are going to formally meet again in Bangkok in March. Just for you to know, and if you are curious, you have there the URL if you want to see it, how it looks like.
So my quick thoughts on that, Diego, is I think probably it can come from the chairs and the AD, or maybe it's from the working group. But maybe we check with Mahesh what he thinks is appropriate, just in terms of how it's phrased about it being created. Or we can check with Mahesh. Okay, so that I think is that covered. I've put the link of that in the chat if anyone wants to look at that. But again, as Diego says, we'll get that sent to the list. The last thing that I want to discuss is sort of next steps. So obviously we only managed to get through the use cases today. There's obviously some requirements discussion that'd be useful to have. I don't think that should stop the other work going on. I don't know whether we will try and schedule another requirements interim before IETF 122. I wanted to have, we're proposing some other interims coming up in January or in early February, late January, early Feb, for some of the other work. So we'll try and arrange those. There's been a suggestion on a list that we try, and because of the sort of time zones and the fact that we've got geographically dispersed participants, that we try and do these meetings sort of 8 hours apart. So that is what we'll try and schedule and see how that goes. And make sure we get enough participation. So our plan is to do the next meeting. I've discussed with Diego, it's either basically 8 hours earlier or 8 hours later, plus or minus an hour to tweak it to find what's suitable. So that's our plan, and we'll try and do one in each of the time zones. I think that sort of covers anything. Any other last comments or questions before we close today's session? If not, then thank you for your participation. Thank you for those that are taking notes. I think we sort of had good discussion here. I'm glad we spent the time on this. I think that's been useful. Emil, thank you for presenting and going through all those in details. And we'll be in touch both to confirm this on the list and also to discuss sort of next steps with the authors as well. Thank you all.
Very good. So thank you.
And guys, see you.
Many thanks.
And if we don't talk before, Merry Christmas and the best for the new year. And talk to you soon.
Yeah, good holidays all. Thank you.
Bye.
All the best, guys.
Thank you.